People all over the world have been enchanted by the Rat Pack for decades. However, there are stories that need to be shared behind all the flash and glitz. Now, among Hollywood's most adored stars, Ernest Borgnine has chosen to speak out about the mysterious Dean Martin. What was Martin like when he wasn't being so cool? Were there things that only Borgnine knew? Get ready to learn the hidden facts about a friendship that changed Hollywood in a way that no other friendship has. You will no longer believe what you thought you knew about the King of Cool after hearing this. First, let's talk about the connection between Ernest Borgnine and Dean Martin. Borgnine is a great actress. Seeing the epic movie From Here to Eternity on the set probably makes him think this is going to be a musical, because Frank Sinatra is in it. In any case, he meets Dean Martin while shooting, and that meeting will stay with him forever. Borgnine says, "As I leave the set, Dean Martin walks on stage and tells the crowd, 'Now there's an actor.' It hits him right then. This wasn't just a compliment for no reason. Dean really meant it. Let's go back in time a bit. Who the heck was this Dean Martin guy? This kid from Ohio had a rough start. His name is Dino Palucci. At home, he spoke Italian, and at school he had a hard time learning English. He even quit. Do you believe it? But people who don't follow the rules can sometimes tell the best stories. Besides fighting, he tried getting drugs, you name it. In the ring, he even called himself Kid Crochet. He finally finds his groove in music. He starts to sing, someone hears him, and he's off. Then there's World War II. He is called up, and luckily gets out of the army early. He then goes back to work in show business. That's where Jerry Lewis comes in. Jerry Lewis is a wild card comedian who meets Dean Martin, who is a smooth player. In Sparks Fly, they meet at a club. As the saying goes, the rest is history. Next, Dean and Jerry, who are such a great pair, put together a musical comedy show. Dean is a great singer, and Jerry is great at making people laugh with his body. They went well together like fire and ice. Their first show was at the 500 Club in Atlantic City. It wasn't really a standing applause though. The crowd looked more confused than amused. A guy named Skinny D'Amato owned the club and basically told them he would kick them out if they didn't improve. But these guys were tough. They started over, and boy did they come back with a bang. The next show they put on was magic. Jerry would talk over Dean mid-song, which would make him chase Jerry across the stage in a funny way. Then there was this part where Jerry, dressed as a clumsy waiter, would crash Dean's show and cause all kinds of trouble. The crowd went crazy. Their fame went through the roof. It wasn't long before they were the talk of the town, and they even got to go on Etana. To take things to the next level, they hired some of the best writers in the business to help them write their act. Things were getting better. They made a good deal with Paramount for radio, making $75,000, which was a lot of money back then. But there were problems along the way to success. Dean and Jerry got into a fight. Dean thought that Jerry was more important than him, and that the jokes were taking away from the music. He wanted to try new things, but their deal with Paramount pretty much stopped them. That's when things really went wrong. Everything about the story was sad. Picture yourself on stage with your best friend. People are going crazy, and then all of a sudden, your face is gone from the cover of a magazine. That's pretty much what happened to Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, his comic partner. See, these two worked well together, but their friendship took a big hit when Dean felt like Jerry didn't care about him at all. It all happened in 1954, after they put on this crazy over-the-top three-ring circus show. They even got an article in a magazine. But guess who was strangely missing from the picture? Dean. Dean had enough because he was angry. He said no more Paramount and no more Jerry. When the end of his deal came around, he ran away quickly. Now everyone thought Dean was going to lose it. It was laughed at that he was nothing without Jerry. Dean, bless his heart, showed them all they were wrong. He went out on his own and focused on becoming a singer. He could really sing too. That's love. This is what memories are made of. Everyone loves someone. I loved those songs so much. Dean didn't want to just be a singer though. He wished to become a movie star. Oh, how hard he tried. As for his early performance work, let's just say it wasn't great. After that came The Young Lions in 1958. The war movie was a big hit, and Dean was back in the spotlight. He was chatting with John Wayne, Ricky Nelson, and all the other big names in Hollywood. It was even thought that he should win a Golden Globe. Dean was on fire after that. It was his job to make some of the movies he was in. He was turned into a celebrity, and a real star. Don't forget about the Rat Pack either. John Dean, Frank Sinatra, when Sammy Davis Jr., these guys were the best party animals ever. Every show they sang, told jokes, and charmed their way through it. It was like nothing Vegas had ever seen. The Dean Martin Show joined soon after. It's like the most relaxing TV show ever. Dean would talk with guests, make some inappropriate jokes. Some might say a few too many, and generally have a good time. He looked very classy in a dress. It became a huge hit, not even though NBC's censors were always after him. Dean was a loyal family man off screen, even though he looked like a playboy on screen. He cared about his family. His friends say he wasn't really that much of a drinker, even though he played himself as a bit of a drunk on TV. Dean and Jerry finally put the fight behind them after many years. It was a moving time for them. After that, everything went well, until Dean had a terrible accident. Dean Martin, the singer, lost his son Dean Paul in a plane crash in March 1987. Even though Dean was in the Air National Guard, it was a terrible accident that hit him hard. He really went downhill and became very depressed. To feel better, he turned to drinking. His friend Frank Sinatra tried to make him feel better by taking him on tour, but it was like putting out a fire with gasoline. Dean could not take his eyes off of his bottle, and he never took his lips off of that cigarette. When we talk about cigarettes, the years of smoking all the time finally caught up with him. He was told he had lung cancer in 1993. Dean could have had surgery, but his stubborn heart wouldn't let him. He stayed out of the public eye, spent time with his family, and then disappeared. He died on Christmas Day, 1995, at the age of 78. Everyone in the world was sad about the death of this giant. In his honor, even the Las Vegas Strip turned down its lights. He stopped the path from a kid who dropped out of school to a pop star known all over the world. It's time to talk about what happened between Dean Martin and Borgnine, now that we know who he was. Through Borgnine's own words, he let us into their relationship and showed us a side of Dean that was much more than the cool and swaggery image. For what it's worth, Dino was more than just a pretty face. He was a true friend. Let's talk about Ernie now. He was born Hermes Ephron Borgnine and came from a pretty poor family. He grew up in Connecticut in a working-class home. His parents came from Italy and raised him. What did he do after high school? What any good American would do. He joined the Navy. When the second one hit, he was right back in uniform, ready to serve his country. Ernie didn't know what to do with his life after the war. Ernest Borgnine wasn't really made to work in a machine. That became clear to him right away. His mom saw his skills better than he did, which was lucky for him. She told him one day, "You always look stupid in public. Why not get paid for it?" Most kids would laugh, but Ernest had an insight. As he sat at the kitchen table, it was like a light bulb went off in his head. And after 10 years, Grace Kelly gave him an Oscar. He first learned to act at the Randall School of Drama in Hartford. After that, he joined the Barter Theater in Virginia. This spot was wonderful. During the Great Depression, people could sell things like apples and eggs for tickets. In 1947, he got his first part in State of the Union. People really liked him, even though it wasn't a big part. He kept the momentum going with Tennessee Williams' The Glass Menagerie. He played the gentleman caller, and showed that he could bring the drama. He was ready for New York City by 1949. In Harvey, his first show on Broadway, he played a nurse. After that, he went on to work in TV shows. Captain Video and his Video Rangers was his first job. Doesn't it sound silly? But it let a lot of people in. He showed up everywhere. He was on the Goodyear Television Playhouse, Laramie, Fireside Theater, and many more. Soon enough, Hollywood called. In 1951, The Whistle at Eaton Falls was his first movie part. But what was his big break? In From Here to Eternity, he plays the mean Sergeant Fatso Judson. The movie got great reviews and won Best Picture, putting Ernest on the map. Borgnine wasn't afraid to be the bad guy. He played a lot of bad guys in movies like Johnny Guitar and Vera Cruz, but he was born in 1955. In Marty, he played a shy but sweet butcher, and everyone fell in love with him. The movie won all the awards at Cannes, and Borgnine beat out big names like Frank Sinatra and James Dean to win the awards. He won a Golden Globe, and a BAFTA too. He looks so much better than he did when he was Captain Video. Then they became TV stars. His first job was on McHale's Navy, a WWI show about a group of misfits. It aired in 1962. Ernest played Captain Quentin McHale, a tough but likable guy who kept his strange team in line. It became a hit right away, and stayed in the top 30 for its first season. He was loved by many, and he was even nominated for an Emmy. That being said, the joke got old after 4 seasons, and the show stopped in 1966. However, Borgnine's work did not stop. He was everywhere for the next 30 years. He played lead parts in movies like The Dirty Dozen, The Poseidon Adventure, and Escape from New York. He even played Dutch in the morally strong western The Wild Bunch. Borgnine said afterward that every movie should have a message. In the past, bad guys always got what they deserved. It looks like they're now in charge. Before the trip and TV, he also won that though. Magnum, P.I. The Love Boat, Little House on the Prairie, and Touched by an Angel are some of the shows I like. You could see his face every time you changed stations. Borgnine was Hollywood's go-to guy for, well, everything after that. It's all there. Westerns, dramas, sitcoms, and more. He got it right. He kept working right up until the end, appearing in the last shows of ER like the legend that he was. The work of Ernest Borgnine is renowned, and he never seemed to slow down. His return to Universal Studios in 1983 was for the hit TV show Airwolf, which he shared with Jan Michael Vincent. He was asked by producer Donald P. Belisario himself, after seeing him wrestle on an episode of Magnum in 1982. Right away, P.I. Borgnine said yes and played the part of Dominic Santini, a nice helicopter pilot. Even though the show was a big hit, Borgnine was working very hard behind the scenes. Anyone would have been worn out by the long hours and fights with his younger co-star. If you think about it, CBS ending the show in 1986 was a good break for Borgnine. Take a look back to 1989. Borgnine was going to Namibia with Brandon Lee to film Laser Mission. The movie came out in 1990, but it didn't win any Oscars. In 1995, he was back on TV in The Single Guy as the world's cutest doorman, Manny Cordoba. Co-star Jonathan Silverman made fun of the fact that Borgnine had more energy than everyone else in the group put together. They were there first and left last, and they were probably making jokes between takes. Borgnine showed his daring side in Merlin's Shop of Mystical Wonders, which came out in 1996. In this strange fantasy movie, he told a story about a monkey toy that was stolen from Merlin and was cursed to bang on cymbals. Yes, really. At first the movie didn't do very well, but after being made fun of on Mystery Science Theater 3000, it finally gained a cult following. In the same year, Borgnine took a bus tour of the US to meet friends and see the country. The story of his trip was told in the 1997 film Ernest Borgnine on the Bus. He also found time to visit VA hospitals as part of the National Salute to Hospitalized Veterans. Borgnine was back in uniform by 1997. In McHale's Navy, he played Rear Admiral Quentin McHale. Tom Arnold played his son and took over the role and the name. After a year, he showed up in the comedy Baseball as a rich businessman who was just as silly and funny. Finally, he played Mermaid Man on SpongeBob SquarePants, which became his most famous part. When paired with Tim Conway, McHale's Navy buddy and Barnacle Boy, Borgnine loved his part as a retired superhero. Both kids and grown-ups really liked him. What a sweet thing that Nickelodeon showed all of his Mermaid Man shows after he died as a tribute. Borgnine kept going. He was in the Hallmark movie A Grandpa for Christmas in 2007. He was nominated for a Golden Globe at the age of 90 for the touching story of a grandfather who had lost touch with his granddaughter but became close with her again. He also found time to write Ernie, his autobiography, which was less of a serious narrative and more of a story. Let's get together and tell some great stories. It broke people's hearts when Borgnine played a husband who watched his wife die in the last season of ER in 2009, and because it was so moving, he was nominated for an Emmy. It was his first in almost 30 years. Age didn't matter to him, because he was in another Harvest Moon that same year at age 92. He made a grand exit from the movie business. He had a funny appearance on Saturday Night Live with Morgan Freeman in 2010, and was in the action movie Red. In 2011, he finished his last movie The Man Who Shook the Hand of Vicente Fernandez. There was always something for Borgnine to do, and he never lost his sense of humor or love for his friends. Ernest Borgnine was the person who really lived up to the name Unstoppable. Two giants, two very different paths, but each an icon in their own right, Borgnine and Martin. This is where things get good. Ernest Borgnine, an actor, told a story that perfectly describes Dean's charm. Borgnine heard Martin point to him and say, "Now there's an actor." After a scene was over on set, take a look. Dean Martin, who is known as the king of cool, giving you a praise like it's nothing. Borgnine was shocked. He liked Dean already, but hearing that kind of praise made his week, or maybe even his year. Afterward, Borgnine said Dean was the nicest person ever and talked about how easy it was to get along with him. Their strong bond quickly turned into a friendship that will last. Now, let's talk about Dean. He didn't like being the center of attention. Even though he was a megastar, he helped other people. Dean was the one who showed everyone how it's done in Hollywood, which is often a place where egos and competition clash. There's something about him that makes people feel like $1,000,000. Let's toast that. Ernest Borgnine's stories about Dean Martin are more than just Hollywood stories. As they say, a few kind words and a real heart can change a life. Borgnine was right next to the real Dean Martin, and he was a lot more than the smooth-talking man who drank martinis that we saw on TV. Even though Martin seemed very cool, he was really just as heartfelt, humble, and funnily enough, grounded as your neighbor who still mows their lawn. Borgnine loved to say that Dean wasn't just another famous person who got lost in all the fun. This guy was the real deal. He knew how to make you feel like you were important. He wasn't acting nice, it was what he did. Also, let's not forget that the man was too kind. Do you need help, a laugh, or someone to look out for you? Dean was the one for you. Don't forget the funny parts either. Martin had the best jokes, and they could get through the worst of times. Borgnine often talked about how Dean's wit kept their friendship together. Being around him will make even the worst day feel a little less bad when you're going through life's ups and downs. But behind that steady smile was a man who was going through hard times that he didn't let anyone see. Borgnine was one of the few people who really got to know that side of him. It showed how close they were. Dean didn't just have skill as a superpower, it was that he could stay normal even though everything around him screamed star. Fans loved him and his peers looked up to him, but what really made him stand out was how kind he was. All of it was seen by Borgnine. There was glitz, there was humility, and there were times when Martin would surprise you by being a normal guy with a big heart. What about that friendship between Martin and Borgnine? It wasn't just one of those deals in Hollywood, where they work together and become friends. It was the real deal. Borgnine was the person who worked hard and took everything seriously. And Martin, personification of effortless cool. They were so different from each other, but they made it work. These two people formed a bond that would last because they trusted each other, laughed together, and were truly real, which isn't often seen outside of Hollywood. Borgnine's stories show us that Martin was just a nice guy who loved his friends. Despite all his fame, good person, and we all wish we could have had a drink with them. When it comes to Hollywood, friends like Borgnine and Martin don't come along very often. They stayed together through good times and bad. When Martin's son Dean Paul Jr. died in a plane crash, which was an unimaginable loss, Borgnine was there for him with support that really mattered. He didn't try to fix it or get rid of the tired ideas, because that's what friends do sometimes. He just showed up with a strong shoulder and maybe a bottle of something strong. The street went both ways. While Borgnine was having those, "Am I even good at this?" We all have moments like that. And Martin was there for him. He might not do pom-poms and cartwheels, but he would call or visit Borgnine and tell him how talented he was, and how much everyone who knew him loved him. He was the type of person who would grab you by the shoulders and tell you to calm down. But they were friends for more than just business. They knew how to really laugh. Their favorite thing to do was hang out, whether they were on set or playing golf. It could have been a comedy show with how they talked to each other, and they made everyone on set a lot more fun. The fact that their friendship was real made it so special. That is, they looked past the Hollywood flash and got to know the real person. There was no pride and no fake smiles, just two guys who cared about each other. Their friendship was as uncommon as finding a clean car in Los Angeles after it rains in a world full of selfies and shallow relationships. It's important to remember that even if you're famous and wealthy, the people who stick by you through good times and bad are the ones who really count. Because you need someone to blame when life or even just a bad round of golf goes wrong. Someone who will laugh at your jokes and maybe even pay for dinner.